What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today I got a super awesome video for you guys because here I have the new DJI Avata. So although I have flown with the new goggles too and the new O3 area in it, this is actually gonna be my first time flying with the new drone itself. But firstly, I just wanna show you guys my first impressions of the drone, the kind of gear you need to get this thing up in the air, and kind of how to set it up. And like, I'm gonna fly around this park and see how I feel about it. So without further ado, let's get it. All right guys, so everything you need to fly the Avata is basically in this little backpack right here. Firstly, we have the drone itself. This is the Avata, and I have 3 batteries for it right here. And honestly, coming from traditional FPV drones, I kind of like these batteries. You can charge them with USB-C. They're really easy to use and they look pretty cool compared to using like those weird cheap LiPo batteries. So right off the bat, I do kind of like the feel and build quality of the drone. It feels really legit. And coming from a DJI fanboy, I really do like DJI products. So I really do like the build quality of this drone. Next, we have the goggles too. I already know how to use these. These are really awesome because they're nice and lightweight. They have a really good image. You get a nice 1080p transmission, so I really like that. Then you get the nice little battery for the goggles too. And then next, this is actually my first time seeing this as well. This is the new DJI FPV remote controller 2. And this thing's pretty cool. It's really easy to use. The only downside is it does not have full-size gimbals, so that's one thing to keep in mind, but I do really like this controller. It has a really nice feel to it. It feels kind of like a TBS Tango 2, honestly. Nice feel, really compact, nice and small. I really like that. And then next we have this iPhone cable, because one downside about the Avata is since it now has remote ID, you actually do have to connect it to your phone on the DJI Fly app in order to fly it. However, it is pretty awesome because then you get a nice little monitor to give to your director or whoever wants to see you flying. So I think that is a really cool feature of this. So yeah, that's basically all we need to get the Avata up in the air. Really easy to fly with, really easy, nice and travel friendly. I really like this setup. All right, sweet guys. So right here we have everything we need to get the Avata up in the air. We got our battery plugged in, we got our goggles here, our remote controller. So now we're just gonna set it up and get this thing fired up. So firstly, what you wanna do is turn on the Avata by doing the classic DJI double tap. Next, you wanna plug in your goggles here. Turn on the battery the same way. Press it once, and then long press. Next, you wanna put in your RC sticks for the remote controller here. Screw these guys in here. And next, you wanna open up your phone, go to the DJI Fly app here, and make sure you get that lightning cable plugged in. And the USB-C part goes into the goggles too here. And then next, power on your remote controller here. All right, and just like that, we are ready to go. One cool thing about the DJI Avata compared to regular Cinewhoops is, as you can see here, you can actually tilt the camera up and down. So in that sense, it's kind of like a Mavic. See, as you can see here, you can control the tilt. So I think that's pretty cool. And one thing to keep in mind is in its factory setting, the Avata comes with a lot of security features. Like it doesn't really come in Acro mode. You do have to go to the settings and adjust that. But since this is my first flight with the Avata, I'm just gonna fly in normal mode and just get a feel for it before I change any of the settings. So yeah, for this first flight, I'm just gonna keep it chill and yeah, just fly in the regular normal mode and sport mode. All right guys, so this is gonna be my first flight with the new DJI Avata. Wish me luck. Start up the motors by going like this. Wow, this is super fun. Right now it's flying really similar to a Mavic. Like it feels like a Mavic, but much more agile. It's really easy to fly in this mode right now. And I like it because it's actually not as loud as I expected. My Gep RC Cinewhoop is actually a lot louder than this. But yeah, it's really easy to control. I really like how it shows my home point over there. So I see where I am. But yeah, it definitely feels a little bit different compared to flying in regular Acro mode on my other FPV drones, but this definitely feels really easy and this is a nice warm up for me. before I switch into Acro mode. But yeah, the image on the goggles too is really good. I have really nice image transmission. It does feel a little bit weird because it is trying to self-level itself, so I'm not really used to that coming from more traditional FPV drones, but later when I unlock the full Acro mode, I know that part is going to be fixed. Because it does feel kind of weird that the drone is trying to correct itself a little bit. I'm not really used to that, but yeah, I'm going to fix that after this flight. But yeah, it's like a Mavic. Basically, if you just let go of the controls, it just stands really still, so that's really good for beginners. Super good first flight. It feels really different compared to my other FPV drones, but overall, it feels really reliable and the battery life seems really good as well. So next, I'm gonna change this thing into full Acro mode because as I mentioned earlier, since it is kind of like a beginner consumer drone, you have to unlock Acro mode because as you can see here in the manual, that is still sport mode. So you're gonna have to go into the settings and change it into Acro mode. So in order to do that, you go over here into the menu, go to settings, control, go to remote controller, and set your custom mode to manual mode. And you go ahead and press confirm. And then go up into your stick mode over here and gain an expo. And you have to turn off manual mode attitude limit because what that allows you to do is when you turn that off, you can now do full rolls and flips. When you have that enabled, it kind of forces you to be in this self-leveling mode. So you don't want that if you want to do cool Acro mode and tricks. And that's the mode I'm used to. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. Go ahead and press confirm here. One thing to keep in mind though is once you unlock the full Acro mode, you do have to keep in mind that this joystick is still self-leveling. Later, if we want it to behave more like a traditional FPV controller, we have to go in here and loosen and tighten the screws over here so we get that nice loose throttle. But as you can see right now, it is kind of like a Mavic controller and it does have that self-leveling here, so you have to keep that in mind. But I'm gonna go ahead and do this next flight in the full Acro mode and see how I like it. Woo! Woohoo! Okay, that was kind of weird. So before you can fly in Acro mode, you do have to do this weird test where it wants you to kind of like level out the sticks. But yeah, now I got full Acro mode and yeah, this definitely feels more to what I'm used to coming from more traditional FPV drones. I definitely like turning off that self-leveling mode. I feel like I have more control now. This is definitely what I'm more used to. But yeah, this is really fun. Honestly, flying this drone kind of makes me want to get an Avata because it feels really reliable, it's really easy to use, and the battery life does feel pretty good. I'm still at 64%. And I do like it because it is a little bit quieter than my other ones. That's a huge benefit for me as well. But yeah, honestly, the throttle isn't really bothering me. I thought it would kind of annoy me, the fact that it's like self-leveling, but honestly, when you're flying, you don't even really pay attention to that. I'm just so locked in on flying this thing around that it feels fine. But yeah, this thing definitely feels really good. It feels really similar to flying my other cinema drones, like my GepRC Cinelog 25. But it just feels really nimble, really easy to control here. And honestly, I haven't flown FPV for a while, but I do feel really comfortable flying this right now. Whee! This thing's awesome. Feels really good and my connection is super good. All the way over here, I still have 50 megabytes. And one thing I've been realizing lately is if you're gonna do this professionally and people are paying you to do FPV shoots, you should really get more than one drone, because it's really frustrating when you show up on set and your drone does not turn on or there's something wrong with it. So honestly, I might actually pick up another Avata because, like I said earlier, I'm doing a lot more real estate shoots now and doing a lot of FPV fly-throughs and stuff. So I'm getting paid a lot of money for this. So I think it's really important to have a backup drone. So I already have the goggles too and the controller. So I think it might be a really good option just to pick up the aircraft itself. Just get the Avada aircraft and then I'll be good. But yeah, I would highly recommend flying in the Acro mode. Even though it is a little bit more riskier, I do feel like I have a lot more control because it's what I'm used to. Whenever there's like AI trying to correct my flying, I feel like that's when it makes stuff unpredictable and kind of hard to fly. So I would definitely recommend flying in the full manual Acro mode. What's going on, guys? So today is the next day, and right now I just want to do some recap into what happened yesterday. So yesterday was the first time I did an FPV fly-through for a real estate house, and although the shoot went really well, my boss wasn't really happy with the footage in the end. And the reason for that is because I decided to not film with the GoPro Hero 11. Since I'm pretty new to flying the DJI Avada, having the GoPro on top, it felt kind of weird. I felt like I didn't have as much control, and since I'm flying in a multi-million-dollar house, and there's also realtor agents there and clients, I really did not want to mess up. I didn't want to crash. I didn't want to make a bad first impression. So for that reason, I wanted to stay as nimble as possible, as light, and I really just wanted nice, solid control of the drone since I was flying in really tight spaces. So for that reason, I decided to not go with the GoPro Hero 11. And that was kind of my biggest mistake in the end because my boss, it's really important that the footage be in vertical orientation and also for it to be extremely smooth. And the Avada camera is not the great for that. Because firstly, you cannot record in the 8:7 aspect ratio that the GoPro Hero 11 offers. And in addition, it is a lot harder to stabilize and post using gyroflow or Real Steady. In fact, you can't even use Real Steady with this camera here. So for yesterday's shoot, I decided to shoot in 2.7K 4:3 ratio because I wanted to be as vertical friendly video as possible. And I shot 60 frames and I had EIS Rocksteady on. And having Rocksteady on is actually a mistake because if you want to use gyroflow in post, it's important that you don't have any stabilization active when you're shooting. And that's when the main problem came in because later when I went home and tried to stabilize the Avada footage later in gyroflow, I was getting really bad results. I don't really like using gyroflow. It's kind of a weird program because there's not even really a lens profile for the Avada camera. You would think that someone would make one for the O3 Air unit, but there's nothing there. There's only stuff for GoPro, like the DJI action cameras. And yeah, honestly, after looking at the results, I wasn't really happy with the way it stabilized the footage. It still looked pretty shaky for me. And yeah, it just wasn't really that great. So that's why I feel like filming with the GoPro is gonna be game changing because now they offer Real Steady Go basically for free on the GoPro app on the desktop. And it's just way more plug and play. Literally all you do is just drag in the footage from the GoPro and you can actually still use Hypersmooth to get stable results in Real Steady. So I'm really excited to test this out later. So although I was not happy with the footage at all, I think it was a really good learning experience because I feel like no matter how smooth of a pilot you think you are, there's always gonna be micro adjustments, micro jitters, slight adjustments in altitude, especially when you're flying inside, because when you're flying inside, it's so much more different to flying outdoors because you don't want to hit anything. There's a lot smaller gaps. You're flying a lot slower. And there's always just gonna be kind of slight micro adjustments. So this shoot really taught me the importance of using post-stabilization such as gyroflow or Real Steady because before this, I haven't really done much professional FPV. It's just mostly for my YouTube, just me flying around at the park. And it wasn't really that important for me to have the footage be super freaking smooth. But now that I'm doing all this real estate work and I'm working with this guy that does a ton of videos and reels and stuff, it's really important that the footage be super smooth because basically, I'm always shooting in 4K 60, and for his style, they're always doing those speed ramps, you know? And you can't have a speed ramp and have jitters in the footage because then it's gonna kind of jitter around. So for that reason, the footage needs to be literally butter smooth. And although this shoot was kind of a fail, it really taught me the importance of understanding how to use gyroflow and practice using it. So that's why I'm out here today. I really wanna dial in the GoPro, practice, and see what kind of results I can get with the gyroflow. So this past week, I've been really trying to fly the Avata as much as I can in a bunch of different environments to see how I really feel about its flight characteristics and see how I really feel about this drone in general. And overall, I really enjoy flying this thing. I mean, I think it's the perfect drone to just toss in your camera bag, go for some really nice carefree flights at sunset, and really just enjoy yourself. I think one of my favorite parts about this drone is firstly, its user experience. I mean, it's a really easy drone to set up, it's really simple to use, and also has a really good battery life. I think that's the biggest pro about this drone. You can easily get 10 minutes of flight time out of this thing. Yesterday, I was cruising around at the park and I got easy 10 minutes out of it, and when I landed, I still had 40% battery life. So I think that's a huge benefit of the Avata. On normal FPV drones, you can usually get around like 5 minutes of flight time. So I think if you just want to cruise around, have fun, and you don't really care about image quality, this is a great drone to have. However, I think its downfall happens when it comes to professional settings. As a professional FPV pilot, I'm getting hired to fly indoors, doing real estate fly-throughs, and as a professional, I would not recommend this drone. I tried multiple times flying this thing indoors, and it's just not optimized for that. Especially when you put a GoPro on top, it really throws off its center of gravity, and it makes it really hard to control indoors. However, flying this thing indoors taught me a ton about FPV. After flying this thing inside, it made me realize how important it is to have a 2.5-inch drone and a naked GoPro. What all the pros use whenever they're doing those professional fly-throughs through those cool mansions or factories or big restaurants, more often than not, they're using a 2.5-inch Cinewhoop with a naked GoPro. And after flying this thing, it made me realize how important it is for me to get my own 2.5-inch rig, because when you're flying indoors, you want to be as nimble as possible, as light as possible, especially when you're flying around people. You don't want to be damaging anything, you don't want to hurt anyone. And by having a 2.5-inch drone, it makes it way more stress-free, it makes it much easier to control indoors, and overall, it's just a way more pleasant flight experience. So after flying the Avata a bunch indoors, it made me really passionate about building my 2.5-inch drone. And in fact, I hit up one of my friends who is also a professional FPV pilot, and he really recommended this new frame by Mocha, which is a 2.5-inch Cinewhoop made for filmmaking, and he recommended all the parts to build, and later this week, I'm actually gonna go to his house and he's gonna show me how to build it. Although I am pretty confident with soldering and fixing stuff, I haven't actually built my own Cinewhoop yet from the ground up, so I think it's gonna be really awesome by having a professional and having someone that's really experienced with this, helping me go through and build my first Cinewhoop, because I'm gonna be using this Cinewhoop on professional jobs, so I wanna make sure everything is super legit, everything is all good to go, because I do not want anything to fail on set. So I'm really excited for that, because the Avata has kind of showed me that although it's a really fun drone to have, it's not really optimized for professional settings. So this thing taught me a ton about what I really want in a Cinewhoop FPV filmmaking drone. So I'm super excited for that. But overall, if you're just a hobbyist and you just want to fly around and you just want to zip around, and especially if you're a beginner to FPV, I think this is a great drone because it doesn't require any setup in beta flight. Literally, it's really easy to just get up and go. And honestly, this drone is a ton of fun to take out and fly with me. I've been flying this thing so much lately, and honestly, I feel like it's making me a better FPV pilot, because lately I've just been taking it to a ton of locations, and I've been really trying to hone in my FPV Cinewhoop skills and just have a ton of fun flying. I just got done flying at a really cool park I never flown at, and right now I'm probably gonna zip around over here. And yeah, just a ton of fun to fly. And I think the smart features are pretty helpful. For example, if you lose connection, this thing will come home and land for you. And it does have some cool features, like you can pan and tilt the FPV camera here. You can only tilt it actually, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, it's just really easy to set up. And like I said, the user experience is really awesome. So overall, like, if you're into drones and you don't have an FPV yet and you just want to get into flying FPV, this is a pretty good drone to start. However, it is kind of expensive because you can get a similar setup for half the price. Any of the other button flies, like by GepRC, those go for about 300 bucks. So if you are willing to pay the premium, that 600 bucks, I do think it's worth it, but you can save yourself a buck by going with the cheaper ones like GepRC or any of the other brands that sell button flies. So overall, I think it's a really fun flight experience. But like I said, if you're a pro and you really want to get those cinematic shots doing the fly-throughs for real estate, I would definitely recommend getting a 2.5 inch and going with a naked GoPro, because even when you throw a GoPro on here, although it does work, it makes it really hard to control and it's just not made for it at all. So I would highly recommend going for that 2.5 inch Cineloop drone. So overall, I've been really enjoying this experience and I feel like it taught me a lot. I would probably personally not spend my own money on this drone, but I definitely think it's a pretty cool drone to have. So yeah.